Okay, let's unpack this because what does storing half-drank flat beer in like empty tomato juice jars have to do with the fundamental laws of quantum physics or, the actual weight of the human soul?
Right, which sounds totally crazy when you put it like that.
It really does. I mean, usually when we look for profound universal truths, we expect these pristine presentations, right?
Yeah, totally. Like a guru on a mountaintop.
Exactly, or some highly produced seminar where a speaker points to a polished slide and reveals the secrets of the cosmos to you. But today, we are finding those exact secrets in the messy, unfiltered, late-night audio recording of two cousins just, trying to figure out how reality actually works.
And that contrast is, well, it's exactly what makes this source material so compelling.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at this raw, sprawling conversation between two guys,
Yeah.
Chuck and Eric. And there is no curated wisdom here at all.
No stage lighting, no script.
None of that. Just a completely blue-collar, wildly grounded exploration of manifestation, the mechanics of human focus, and just the deeply human experience of navigating what they actually call life's playground.
Life's playground. I love that term. And for you listening, that is exactly the mission of this deep dive today. We are essentially extracting these hidden gems of wisdom that are just buried within their casual banter.
Because they're taking these massive, cosmic concepts and just dragging them right down to the gritty reality of an everyday Tuesday.
Yes, and I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you are going to look at your own daily thoughts, your sleep habits, and even like the stray animals in your neighborhood through an entirely different mechanical lens.
Mechanics are really the core of their whole philosophy here.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't treat human reality as some vague, mystical lottery.
Right. Not at all.
They treat it as a highly responsive system. And they establish this right away with a foundational theory, which is basically you get what you think about, whether you want it or not.
Which sounds simple, but they add this incredibly practical, almost financial spin to the idea. They call it the karmic credit score.
The karmic credit score, yeah. Which completely reframes how we process our own struggles, I think.
Oh, totally. I mean, think about the psychological weight of actual financial debt.
Right.
If you ignore a mounting credit card bill, it doesn't just remain static, it actively grows, right? Interest accrues on it.
And compounds, yeah.
Exactly. And they apply this exact financial mechanism to human attention. So if you pay attention to your debt in a constant state of worry, your debt gets bigger.
Because you are essentially funding that problem with your focus.
Yes,
Right.
because in their view, interest accrues on your life activities based entirely on the attention you pay to them.
And what's really fascinating here is how the underlying mechanics of this align so well with how neurobiology actually functions.
Really? How so?
Well, the cousins use this term airtime. Like, the more airtime you give a specific thought, especially you speak it out loud, the more it dictates your reality.
Yeah.
They actually describe the brain as a rubber band.
Okay, a rubber band.
Yeah, like it snaps back whatever energy you put into stretching it.
I want to dig into the physics of that rubber band analogy for a second, because it's not just a poetic metaphor, is it?
No,
Weird?
not at all. There's a genuine physiological difference between just passively thinking a negative thought and giving it what they call airtime by actually speaking it aloud.
So it's a massive difference then.
Oh, huge. When you harbor an internal thought, it's a relatively contained neurological event. But the moment you engage your vocal cords, you are fundamentally changing the physical reality of that thought,
Because you're physically doing something.
Exactly. You are engaging your motor cortex to move your mouth, you're using your lungs to push the air out, and your auditory cortex is hearing your own voice, feeding the thought right back into your brain.
Oh, wow. So it's a loop.
It's a massive loop. You are burning a much wider, deeper neural pathway. The cousins argue that this verbiage, like the physical act of sound, literally programs the brain.
And they astutely point out that the universe's default status is simply momentum.
Right, which means a body in motion stays in motion. You will just keep thinking your last thought unless you purposefully mechanically interrupt it.
Which means you are recreating yesterday over and over again simply by default.
Yeah, because the brain favors the path of least resistance. The most well-worn neural pathway is just the one the electrical signal will naturally travel down.
Which brings up a massive practical hurdle for me. Like, it sounds completely logical on paper, right?
Yeah.
Just stop giving airtime to your problems. Just interrupt the momentum. But if you are drowning in bills or you are dealing with a genuinely toxic boss, You can't just flip a switch and delete that reality from your mind.
No, it's incredibly hard.
I was conceptualizing how difficult this interruption actually is, and honestly, it feels identical to dealing with a social media algorithm.
Oh, that's a really good way to look at it. The mechanics of an algorithm actually map perfectly onto this. How do you see that playing out?
Well, think about how an algorithm is fundamentally blind to the quality of your experience,
It just wants engagement.
Exactly. It only registers engagement.
Yeah.
If you click on an anger-inducing video because it outraged you, the algorithm doesn't say, oh, they're upset, let's stop showing them this.
No, it says, hey, they like anger. Let's give them more.
Right. The algorithm says, they engaged with anger, let's feed them 10 more anger videos. And your brain functions as that exact algorithm. If you focus intensely on your terrible boss, the algorithm of your mind starts actively highlighting every single tiny annoying thing your boss does.
And you can't just delete the app of your own brain.
Exactly. You have to actively, painstakingly train the algorithm with new inputs.
You have to literally force yourself to click on different content.
Yes, you have to type a completely new search term into the bar, even if you don't really want to, just to break the feed's momentum.
And, the cousins explicitly acknowledge this difficulty in the audio. They understand that you cannot just let something go into a void.
Because nature hates a vacuum.
Right. You can't just declare, I am not going to think about my boss, because the subject of that sentence is still the boss.
Oh, wow, right. You are still feeding the algorithm the same keyword.
Exactly. The only mechanical way to let something go is to replace it. It requires massive, deliberate effort to override that default momentum.
And they have actual real-world proof of this working in their own lives. Like, they contrast the struggle of dwelling on the toxic boss, which guarantees that boss remains this prominent negative figure, with a massive cinematic life change that one of them actually achieved.
The move to Alaska.
The move to Alaska. He manifested this whole move.
And he didn't just casually think about the Alaskan tundra once and, hope for the best.
No, not at all.
He gave it massive, intentional airtime. He built an entire ecosystem of focus around this singular goal.
He basically fed his internal algorithm Alaska every single day, and the universe seemingly responded to the momentum. I mean, he got a free trailer.
Which is wild.
Totally wild. He figured out how to get new tires for it. He packed up his entire life and made this epic, grueling drive north. And the other cousin points out a really fascinating pattern during all this.
What is that?
He says that every time he achieved a minor logistical goal toward this move, it was like the universe was saying, okay, we got you, continue, now what?
Now what? That is the ultimate mantra of momentum, isn't it?
Yeah.
The universe, in their framework, isn't acting as some moral judge of your desires. It acts as an amplifier.
It's just a volume knob.
Exactly. It takes whatever frequency you are broadcasting on your personal radio station and simply turns the volume up. If you broadcast the Alaska Dream, it amplifies the resources, the motivation, all the synchronicities required for Alaska.
And if you broadcast misery about a boss, it just amplifies the friction.
Right. It's completely impartial.
So the transition from this grand, sweeping Alaskan manifestation to the next part of their conversation is incredibly jarring.
Oh, it really is.
But honestly, it might be my favorite part of the entire audio.
Oh.
Because they take these sweeping cosmic laws and apply them to the absolute grittiest, most frustrating reality of human existence, which is just trying to get a decent night's sleep.
The mundane application of cosmic rules. I love it.
Right. One of the cousins admits he has built this highly complex, completely frustration-based ecosystem around his bed.
And the details are so painfully relatable, too.
Oh my God, they are. He requires 3 specific pillows just to prop himself up.
He has a fan blasting right next to his head.
Yes. He tosses, he turns, he has to reorganize the pillows constantly. He wakes up multiple times in the middle of the night to use the bathroom.
And then on top of all that physical discomfort, his brain is actively attacking him with these stress-inducing dreams.
Yeah, he literally wakes up saying, thank God it was just a dream.
So he has unintentionally trained his internal algorithm to view the bed as a threat environment.
Yes, that's exactly it. And the other cousin stops him right there and applies their grand theory of the karmic credit score directly to this sleep issue.
He goes right for the verbiage.
He targets the verbiage. He tells him that if he ever wants to actually fix this, he can never, ever again say out loud that he is having a hard time sleeping.
Which is tough when you're exhausted.
It is, but he demands a verbal input shift. He tells him he has to start saying, I'm looking forward to a decent night's sleep.
Now, on the surface, that sounds kind of dismissive of the genuine physical exhaustion the man is feeling, right?
Yeah, it sounds almost like toxic positivity at first glance.
Exactly, but psycholinguistically, it is a brilliant intervention. He is forcing a shift from a statement of deficit to a statement of anticipation.
So by saying sleep is hard, he's just burning the neural pathway of anxiety even deeper.
Precisely. The bed is currently coded in his brain as a trigger for stress. By forcing his mouth to physically say the words, "I am looking forward to it," he is attempting a linguistic override of a physical stress response.
He is manually clipping on a different video to retrain the algorithm.
Exactly. It's a mechanical attempt to recode the bed as a trigger for relaxation instead of stress.
But the sleep issue actually has another layer to it, and this leads to the most absurd, wildly specific anecdote in the entire source material.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
So good. The cousin confesses that a massive contributor to his sleep disruption is his beverage intake.
Okay.
He works hard, he's exhausted, and he admits to drinking anywhere from 5 to 10 beers a night before bed.
Which naturally leads to the logistics of what they call the beer emergency fund.
The beer emergency fund. Okay, so for everyone listening, picture this. He is exhausted, literally falling asleep at his keyboard. He has drank 4.5 beers.
He's hitting his limit.
He cannot physically finish the remaining half of the 5th beer, but he absolutely refuses to waste it. So he has engineered this entire system to save it.
It's like amateur engineering at its finest.
It really is. He takes empty 64-ounce tomato juice jars, like these massive glass containers, right? And he pours the half-drank, already flat beer into the jar, puts the lid on, and then places a heavy object on top of the lid to try and keep whatever microscopic amount of fizz is left trapped inside.
And then he just stores this in the fridge as his bank of beer.
Yes, I was literally dying laughing listening to this. You have these two guys dissecting neuroplasticity and the universe's default status of momentum, and then pivoting flawlessly into the thermodynamics of preserving flat beer so it doesn't get moldy.
Well, the visual of a man using heavy objects to pressurize half a can of warm beer inside a giant tomato juice jar is, it's incredibly humorous. But it is also a pretty profound demonstration of human ingenuity being applied to a perceived scarcity.
Oh, that's interesting. When you look past the humor, what does that obsessive preservation of a resource, even a mundane one like flat beer, actually tell you about his cognitive load?
It tells me he is terrified of running out of things he values, even on a micro level. He is applying immense focus to a deeply mundane problem.
Right.
And that perfectly illustrates their entire philosophy.
Yeah.
Because the universe doesn't judge the content of your focus.
It just doesn't care.
It really doesn't care if you are manifesting $1 million business, a move to the Alaskan tundra, or engineering a makeshift beer vault in your refrigerator.
The universe only responds to the intensity of the system you build.
Exactly. The identical mechanical focus required to build a greenhouse in the freezing cold is currently being applied to those tomato jars.
That is a staggering way to view reality. The universe honors the system, not the subject matter,
Yeah.
which makes his approach to human relationships in the next part of the recording so striking, because he takes this intense, scarcity-driven focus and he applies it to a memory of a woman.
Ah, the story of Angie. Yeah, the conversation moves from the isolated physical reality of the bedroom to the emotional resonance of human connection.
Right. So the cousin with the sleep struggles brings up this woman he met 2 years prior, and the contrast in how he describes her compared to his messy daily life with the fans and the flat beer is just pure poetry.
It really is beautiful.
He says her greeting was like a butterfly landing on me.
It conveys such an immediate sense of weightlessness, doesn't it?
Completely. He describes the interaction as the most effortless, unconditional hug, like a warm summer breeze. She was lighthearted, she was giggling, she was entirely present.
And he hasn't seen her in a year, right?
A whole year. But the emotional imprint of that one interaction is so heavy for him that he is actively strategizing how to manifest her. He is literally asking his cousin, what do I do to get her to show up at the beach next Saturday?
He's intensely focused on acquiring this specific person.
Exactly, which is where his cousin steps in with advice that runs completely counter to like mainstream manifestation culture, because the instinct is always to focus intensely on the target, right?
Visualize the person, say their name.
Yeah, but the advice given is to stop focusing on Angie entirely. Wait, so if the universe amplifies what you focus on, why wouldn't he focus on the exact girl he wants?
Because focusing on a specific absent person is actually a trap. If he focuses on Angie, the subtext of his focus is, Angie is not here.
Oh, Oh, wow. So he's accruing interest on his karmic credit score, but in the negative column.
Exactly. He is building massive momentum around her absence. The advice is to detach from the specific soul of Angie and instead focus obsessively on the feeling the interaction provided.
The lightness, the unconditional acceptance, the summer breeze.
Yes, the cousin introduces this concept of milking it.
Milking it. Which sounds funny, but he basically tells him to talk endlessly about how great that hug felt. To just enjoy the memory, talk about the lightheartedness with anyone who will listen, and essentially artificially sustain that emotional high through verbiage and focus.
It is the practice of deliberate frequency tuning.
Okay, I have to challenge this concept of making it for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Because there's a very fine line between deliberate frequency tuning and just straight up toxic positivity. Like, if I am sitting alone in my apartment talking out loud about how incredible a hug was 2 years ago from a woman who isn't even returning my calls, I don't feel like I'm manifesting a better reality. I feel like I'm living in deep denial of my current lonely reality. Where is the line there?
That is the most common pitfall of this entire philosophy, actually. And the source material addresses it head on.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, the advising cousin does not advocate for delusion at all. He demands absolute accountability. He explicitly tells his cousin, you create your own reality, and yeah, you create the bad shit too. Own that.
So it's not about pretending the terrible boss or the lonely apartment doesn't exist.
Not at all.
Uh-huh.
It is about recognizing that your current reality, good or bad, is simply the lagging indicator of your past momentum.
A lagging indicator, okay.
So milking the good isn't delusion. It is a mechanical tool for future momentum. Think of an old analog radio.
Oh, I love a good analog metaphor. Let's hear it.
So you are driving down a long highway, turning the dial, looking for a signal. You're hearing nothing but static, hissing, awful noise.
Right.
And then finally, you tune into a clear station playing a song you absolutely love. What do?
You take your hand off the dial.
You take your hand off the dial. You don't keep twisting it back to the static just to prove to yourself that the static still exists.
Oh, that's so good.
You know the static is there. You just deliberately choose to listen to the music. Milking a positive emotion is the act of leaving the dial alone when you hit a good frequency.
Yeah.
Talk about the good stuff. So the momentum of your life goes from 70 miles an hour to 75 to 100 purely on a positive frequency.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's not about ignoring the static, it's about acknowledging the static exists, but deliberately keeping your hand off the dial once you find the music.
Exactly. You are training your internal algorithm to stop constantly scanning for threats.
That is the exact synthesis, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we accept that milking a positive feeling acts like a tuned radio dial, what happens when that frequency starts picking up like external signals?
Because it does.
Because that's exactly what the cousins experience next. They start looking for external proof that the universe is actually listening to their frequency, which they refer to as nature's winks.
Nature's winks. They view nature as essentially the first responder of the universe. When you are truly in alignment, when your dial is locked onto that clear station, the environment begins to actively interact with you to confirm it.
And the story they use to illustrate this is just fantastic. One of the cousins has this large maple tree in his yard, right?
Right.
And he's developed this habit of just walking outside, fully expecting to see something interesting, a robin, a squirrel, maybe a rabbit. He's practicing the state of open expectation without any desperation attached to it.
He's just perfectly tuned into the environment.
So he walks out one day, looking toward the maple tree for the usual rabbit, and instead, sitting right under his BMW, is a stray black cat.
And the detail he includes here is so funny.
It is.
Yeah.
He says the cat looked at him with an expression of, "How did you know I was here?"
Like he completely caught the cat off guard.
Exactly.
Now, a stray cat under a car is a phenomenally mundane event, but within their framework, it is interpreted as something much larger. They discuss the idea that the supernatural is actually just extra natural.
Extra natural. I like that. Meaning nature just doing a little bit more to get your attention.
They argue that the universe, or God, doesn't typically manifest as this booming cinematic voice from the clouds. It manifests as that highly specific, fuzzy feeling you get in your chest when you notice small, synchronized events.
Like a flower blooming in a crack in the pavement.
Or a bird landing uncomfortably close to you.
Or a black cat staring at you like it owes you money.
Exactly. It's that fleeting feeling of being actively perceived by your environment.
You know, the way they describe these winks feels exactly like a player finding Easter eggs in an open-world video game.
Oh, the mechanics of video game design apply beautifully here. Go on.
Well, think about it. Developers build these massive, sprawling digital worlds, and they will hide little inside jokes, secret items, or weird encounters in random corners of the map.
Right, stuff most people miss.
Exactly, because the game functions perfectly fine if you just run straight down the main quest line and ignore everything else, which most players do.
Yeah, they just want to beat the game.
But if you slow down, if you decide to jump behind a random waterfall or climb a seemingly pointless tree in the corner of the map, you find a hidden chest or a developer's message.
The Easter egg.
Right. The Easter egg is only revealed to the player who is paying close attention to the environment.
So the universe is the game developer in this analogy.
Right. And the cat under the BMW is the Easter egg. It was placed there waiting to see if the player, the cousin, was tuned in enough to check a random spawn point.
That analogy perfectly frames their subsequent and rather passionate philosophy on the nature of cats, actually.
Oh yeah, they have thoughts.
Because they don't view the cat as just a prop in their manifestation game. They view the cat as a sovereign entity.
They have intensely strong opinions on feline living
It's
arrangements.
very strong.
They argue vehemently that cats should exclusively be outdoor companions. They call it the best of both worlds.
Because they respect the animal's autonomy. They believe a cat needs the freedom to hunt, to roam, to engage with the wild energy of the environment. And then occasionally, it can come to your deck for a scratch behind the ears and like some smoked salmon.
And they absolutely refuse to deal with indoor litter boxes, calling them annoying and insisting they've never had a cat that used one.
Which is a fair logistical point, honestly.
Very fair. But the philosophical stance beneath the hygiene preference is really profound. To them, trying to force an independent wild spirit into a closed indoor environment is a direct violation of the natural alignment they are trying to cultivate.
The cat is a temporary visitor in their reality. It is a co-creator on the playground, not a prisoner to be managed.
It is a deeply respectful way to view an animal. But acknowledging that a pet is just a temporary visitor leads to a very sobering, inevitable pivot in the conversation.
Yeah, it does.
Because if they are just visitors, eventually the visit ends. And the audio transitions abruptly from the vibrant, living winks of nature to the absolute finality of death.
They note that losing a pet is very often the first time children are introduced to the hard, unyielding reality of existence. It is the exact moment a child realizes that things die.
And to make sense of this mortality, the cousins embark on this fascinating hybrid discussion, because they don't just lean on spiritual faith to cope with the void.
No, they attempt to lean on 7th grade physics, or 11th grade physics, depending on which cousin you ask.
Right. They invoke the fundamental law of the conservation of mass and energy. The scientific axiom that matter is neither created nor destroyed, it is only transformed.
And to illustrate this, one of them brings up a historical experiment. He describes a scientist who wanted to definitively prove this law.
The log experiment.
Right. The scientist takes a piece of wood, a log, places it inside a completely sealed container, and burns it to ash. He then weighs the resulting ash and the trapped gases and discovers that they equal the exact precise weight of the original log.
So nothing was actually lost, it just rapidly changed form.
Exactly. It is a classic demonstration of closed system physics, likely a simplified retelling of Antoine Lavoisier's work in the 18th century. But then, the cousins take a massive speculative leap.
A huge leap.
They attempt to apply this rigid closed system physics to the human soul.
The 7-ounce soul. Okay, we have to dissect this because this is where my alarm bells were ringing. One cousin claims with absolute conviction that back in the 1930s, an experiment was conducted where a dying body was placed in a vacuum.
Right.
The body was weighed before and immediately after the moment of death, and it was scientifically determined that the human soul weighs exactly 7 ounces.
He presents this as empirical fact in the audio.
Which it is absolutely not. This sounds like a total distortion of an old urban legend.
The 21 grams thing?
Yes. He is likely misremembering the famous 21 grams experiment conducted by Dr. Duncan McDougall in 1907.
Okay, remind me of the details on that one.
So McDougall took 6 tuberculosis patients who were actively dying and put their beds on industrial scales. And he claimed there was a weight drop of 21 grams at the moment of death. But the experiment wasn't in a vacuum, the scales were incredibly clunky, the sample size was tiny, and modern science has widely discredited the entire thing due to massive methodological flaws.
Right, they didn't account for everything.
Sweating, exhalation, bodily fluids, none of it was properly accounted for. It's folklore, not physics.
You are entirely correct to outline the scientific flaws there. The factual accuracy of the 7-ounce soul in a vacuum story is essentially nil. But if we look at why he brings it up, the factual error doesn't actually matter.
The metaphor is what is crucial.
Exactly. How so, do you think?
Well, what we are hearing in that raw audio is humanity's desperate, enduring need to quantify the invisible. We possess a profound psychological terror of the void.
The idea of total non-existence is too vast for the human mind to process comfortably.
So we attempt to apply the rigid, comforting mathematical rules of a physics class to the terrifying mystery of consciousness. The cousin needs the soul to have a physical weight, even if it's just 7 ounces or 21 grams.
Because if the soul has mass, it obeys the law of conservation.
And if it obeys the law of conservation, it cannot be destroyed.
It's still the law. It just no longer looks like a piece of wood. That was his exact quote.
The quote gave me chills.
Yeah. It is a profound coping mechanism disguised as scientific fact. It fuels their deeply held belief that death is not a final ending, but merely a violent transition of energy.
And once you adopt that lens, you start seeing evidence of this transition everywhere. They look to nature's cycles of rebirth. They discuss the Alaskan tundra.
Oh, it's a great example.
For months out of the year, it is negative 50 degrees. The ground is frozen solid. Nothing moves. To the naked eye, the entire landscape is completely dead.
But scientifically, it is merely dormant.
Right. The energy is trapped, waiting. And then spring arrives and life just violently explodes out of nowhere.
The other cousin brings up a farming phrase he learned as a kid in the Midwest to describe this. Knee-high by the 4th of July.
The traditional benchmark for a healthy, thriving corn crop.
He jokes that with modern weather patterns, the phrase doesn't even apply anymore. But the underlying point remains rock solid. The energy that creates the towering stalks of corn was always present in the dark soil.
It was just waiting for the right environmental season to transform from unseen potential into physical reality.
This belief in continuous transition directly impacts how they conduct their daily lives and process grief, actually. They do not view the dead as gone, they view them as transitioned.
One cousin mentions his daily practice of honoring his ancestors. He incorporates a literal greeting, "Good morning, ancestors," into his daily routine.
He also mentions that when his father transitioned, he read the Tibetan Book of the Dead because he wanted to understand the historical rituals of navigating that liminal space.
And there's a brief, deeply touching mention of remembering someone named Tommy who recently passed, picturing him holding an unlit cigarette.
It is a highly specific, visceral way of keeping the airtime of these people alive. If energy cannot be destroyed, then their present focus, their active memory, is the vessel that holds that transcarmed energy in the current moment.
Which brings us perfectly back to their mechanics of co-creation. If human focus is strong enough to hold the energy of the transitioned, what happens when we aggressively apply that exact same mechanical focus to our own future?
Because the audio shifts gears from the ethereal grieving process right back to the mechanical math of manifestation.
One cousin states it flatly, entirely removing all the mysticism. He says, "It's not magic, it's actually just math."
It is an algebraic equation to them. If X input, then Y output.
And the craziest part of this equation, the part that genuinely surprised me, is their claim that you do not even have to believe the words you say for the math to work.
Which is a radical departure from traditional self-help or manifestation literature.
Right, because the mainstream advice always centers on belief. You have to believe it to achieve it.
But they are arguing the exact opposite. They're saying the action precedes the belief. They highlight a specific mantra. Every day, in every way, my life gets even better and things are always working out for me.
And one cousin apparently walked around his house driving the other completely crazy by repeating this endlessly, like a parrot.
When challenged on the absurdity of repeating something you don't feel, the logic provided is striking. The repetition itself is the mechanism of change.
I really have to push back here, though. Let's look at the mechanics. How can repeating words blindly, without any actual emotional conviction or belief behind them, change the physical reality of your life? That sounds like madness.
Let's go back to your own social media algorithm analogy because it perfectly answers your question.
Okay, I'm listening.
If your algorithm is currently feeding you nonstop anger videos and you want to train it to show you baking videos, do you have to emotionally believe that baking is your life's singular purpose to change the feed?
No, I just have to type baking into the search bar.
Exactly. You don't need belief. You just need mechanical input. You have to physically click on the baking videos. You have to let them play on your screen.
Because the algorithm doesn't care.
The algorithm doesn't care about the state of your soul or your emotional conviction. It only registers the mechanical data input. The human brain operates on the exact same principle. When you repeat a mantra hundreds of times a day, even if you feel like a total fraud while saying it, you are forcing a mechanical break in the brain's default momentum.
You are manually firing different synapses.
You are forcing the neural pathways to fire in a new pattern. It is a brute force cognitive override. The action of speaking precedes the belief. As you force the focus, your brain starts noticing resources that align with that focus.
And eventually, as your reality begins to subtly shift because your attention is shifted, the belief follows naturally.
The belief is the byproduct, not the prerequisite.
That makes terrifyingly good sense. You're just manually clicking like on a different reality until the brain's feed catches up. And they are using this brute force mechanic to build some pretty wild dreams.
The conversation turns to some highly specific architectural ambitions.
Yes. One cousin is dreaming of building a bunker/greenhouse in Alaska to grow corn. Because, as we established with the tundra analogy, you can't just throw seeds outside in -50 degrees.
No, you definitely can't. And the other cousin brings up a guy in North Dakota who is successfully growing lemons, oranges, and tropical fruit trees in the freezing cold using natural thermal heating and cooling regulations.
Notice the nature of these goals, too. These are not vague, nebulous dreams of wanting wealth or happiness.
No, they are highly technical, botanical, architectural challenges that require intense, sustained focus and engineering to pull off.
But they don't believe they have to do this engineering alone, and this is a really beautiful part of the audio. They discuss the critical importance of co-creation. The universe might be a blank canvas, but we aren't painting in isolation.
They quote an old proverb, actually. A wise king surrounds himself with many counselors.
Yes. They talk about how their own conversations, like the cousin critiquing the other's use of 2x4s and a bicycle for a past project, are the friction that propels them forward.
They envision a network of all their cousins, a trusted, tight-knit group of individuals actively giving feedback, challenging each other, and shaping reality together.
When you connect this to the bigger picture of their philosophy, it suggests that manifestation isn't just a solitary act of a lone mind trying to bend the universe to its will. It is a collaborative tapestry.
Your airtime interacts with my airtime. If I lend my focus, my energy, and my mechanical input to your greenhouse project, I am adding compounding interest to your reality's momentum.
It's networked manifestation. You aren't just an isolated creator, you are a node in a network of creators. But just as the conversation reaches this lofty, beautiful peak about building thermal greenhouses in the tundra together, they bring it right back down to the messy, nostalgic reality of just being a teenager.
They transition flawlessly from the grand architecture of the future to the deeply unpolished memories of the past.
They start reminiscing about their younger days living in Flagstaff, Arizona. And the details are so incredibly vivid, you can practically smell the stale air in the rooms they describe.
The physical spaces they inhabited reflect a totally different, chaotic era of their lives.
They talk about living in this tiny little cottage. One had what they lovingly refer to as the shitty little side room, while the other had a space divided off by a massive American flag hanging from the ceiling.
Oh, and they talk about how their neighbors literally had to come over to their place just to share their shower.
And the subsequent admission that one of the cousins rarely even used the shower himself.
Showers are for dirt. That was his defense.
Pure classic 17-year-old boy logic. They talk about the local spots, returning to a place called Nirko's Pizza years later, and marveling that it had expanded to 3 locations. It is pure, unadulterated nostalgia for a time when life was simpler, dirtier, and deeply unrefined.
And it is within this specific nostalgia that they share a story that perfectly encapsulates their view of the universe as an utterly flexible playground.
The gangster girl story.
Oh boy, yes.
Okay, so one of them recounts how, during this Flagstaff era, he was putting intense focus, a lot of airtime, into wanting to date a quote-unquote gangster girl. He had decided this was his specific type. This is the aesthetic and energy he wanted to manifest.
He was broadcasting heavily on that specific frequency.
Right, so the universe, acting as the amplifier, responds. It delivers exactly what he asked for. He meets this girl who fits the description perfectly at the State Line gas station.
But almost immediately upon interacting with her, the harsh reality sets in.
He realizes she is, in his words, way too crazy. The physical reality of the manifestation did not match the fantasy he had built in his head.
Which prompts an incredibly important question. What do you do when the universe gives you exactly what you asked for and you realize you hate it?
He literally looks up at the sky and asks, "Can I change my mind?"
Can I change my mind? It sounds like a joke about dating regret, but within their framework, it is a profound philosophical statement.
It means the universe isn't a rigid contract.
Precisely. It implies that the universe is not a punishing entity holding you hostage to your past desires. It is a playground.
The playground.
If you get on the merry-go-round and realize it makes you violently nauseous, you are allowed to step off and walk over to the swings. The universe is utterly flexible. It doesn't judge the request to cancel the order, it just stops the old momentum and begins responding to the new focus.
They describe life as a highly recurrent dream. Every day you wake up, the walls feel solid, the problems feel permanent. You think it is rigid reality, but it's entirely malleable. You can mold it.
Which, hilariously, ties right back into the actual literal dreams they experience when they close their eyes.
The connection between physical inputs and subconscious outputs. We talked earlier about the intense stress dreams caused by the bad sleep setup.
Right, the pillows and the fan.
But right at the end of the audio, one cousin makes this bizarre, totally casual revelation. He says his dreams are usually just a random mishmash of thoughts, but lately he has been having these incredibly vivid, highly repetitive dreams specifically about fairies.
And the catalyst he identifies for these mystical, ethereal visions.
Eating a box of processed noodles and cheap chips right before bed.
It is the ultimate grounding punchline to their entire cosmic philosophy.
I was just marveling at the contrast. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing deep spiritual alignment, karmic credit scores, the conservation of mass, the weight of the human soul, the deliberate tuning of the universe's frequency. Oops, well, tuning the frequency. And then we are confronted with the physical reality that a bowl of cheap processed carbs at midnight completely dictates the narrative of our subconscious mind.
It proves their overarching point beautifully, though. Every single input matters. The physical reality of the body and the spiritual reality of the mind are not two separate domains. They are a single, continuous feedback loop.
They are completely connected.
Whether it is the words we speak hundreds of times a day to retrain our neural pathways, the thoughts we entertain about a toxic boss, the intense focus we place on preserving flat beer, or the processed noodles we digest while trying to sleep, input dictates output.
You cannot feed your body physiological garbage and expect pristine spiritual dreams.
Just as you cannot feed your mind toxic, fearful thoughts and expect to manifest a joyful, expansive life.
Input dictates output. It really is that simple mechanically, and that incredibly difficult to master in practice. We have covered an insane amount of ground today.
We really have.
We have gone from the logistics of moving to Alaska to the psycholinguistics of sleep. We've talked about frequency tuning with butterfly hugs, finding Easter eggs under a BMW, the closed system physics of the 7-ounce soul, building thermal greenhouses in the tundra, and realizing that a box of noodles can summon fairies.
It's a lot.
But the core lesson from Chuck and Eric, running like a steel thread through every single bizarre anecdote, is the undeniable power of momentum, focus, and verbiage. You get what you think about, whether you want it or not.
As you navigate your own week, I would urge you to remember their central metaphor, which is that your life is a playground. But you are the one who must deliberately choose which rides to go on.
Right.
You can wander aimlessly and let the default momentum drag you onto whatever chaotic ride is closest. Or you can use your focus, your verbiage, and your daily input to build the exact ride you want to experience.
And that leaves me with one final provocative thought for you to chew on as we wrap up. We talked so much today about the karmic credit score and how our own thoughts accrue interest for our own lives. We talked about how focusing on our own debt makes it grow, and focusing on our own dreams amplifies them.
Yes.
But what happens if we actively hack that system for someone else? If our thoughts build personal credit, what happens when we intentionally lend our positive credit to a complete stranger's reality without them even knowing?
Oh, that's interesting.
If you spend 5 minutes of your airtime tomorrow purely visualizing and focusing on a stranger's success, like the barista, the person in traffic, the coworker you barely know, does your shared reality upgrade? Does the network of co-creators get stronger just because you gave them your momentum? It is definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Go out there, watch your verbiage, check under your car's forecast, and experiment with your own universe.